All right, I think we're ready. All right, we're going to do a little bit of a look, not a really deep, in-depth look, but just a look at some of the other popular slicers out there. Maybe you don't want to use Cura, maybe you want to try a different thing. And so we'll look at some of the different ones to see, what are some of the bigger ones out there, the more supported ones. There are, I don't even know how many slicers you could potentially find. There are a lot of them. So we'll take, I think I picked up 4 or maybe 3 that we'll look at. The Voron parts came in, so we'll look through that to see if that's the thing that you were be interested in. It is a very different approach than, say, your Ender 3 or a Creality style printer assembly. So just so you know what you're getting into, there are a lot of builds online. I started looking around, and there's a lot of builds that have been like the entire build captured on video, which I don't think I'm going to do that just because it would take forever to do. I'll put little bits here and there when I get to them. I don't even know if it'll be during the time that this class exists, but I'll still put them up. So let's look at some of these other slicers. Well, let's see, first of all, what all do we still have left to do before the quarter ends? Really, there's just going to be this quiz 3. I will open it before the 13th. Actually, I'll probably go ahead and open it Monday or sometime soon and leave it open for a week. It's not a technical quiz, really. I don't think there's any technical questions on it. I think it is more of a end of course survey type quiz. So that leaves us with kind of 2 big topics left. One that's SolidWorks related. I'll probably switch these in order, and so the SolidWorks one will be at the end, and then flexible filament will be on Monday. I actually put the flexible resin in there too. I think I have some flexible resin still that I can try and print and show you that you could, even though this is talking about the resin printer that I showed, it's been a while now. I don't remember where it was. There it is, June 30th. That resin printer, or any of those style resin printers, they do have flexible resins, and so we will show what that means. But today, let's look at Simplified 3D and some other slicers. So let me pull up whichever one pops up first. Well, this one. It looks like Prusa Slicer, which looks like Slicer, which used to be called SLIC 3R, so like Slick 3R or something. I think they were trying to, I don't know the reasoning, but I think they were trying to make it, if you searched for slicer, you would get all sorts of slicers, but you could find SLIC 3R. But they've since, I think they've renamed it to where it's just Slicer. But this is Super Slicer, and it's built on top of all of those. So it's built on top of Prusa, like a fork of Prusa, which is built on top of Slicer. And so it adds in a couple of more levels of control. If you haven't looked at, here's Prusa Slicer. Let's open it because they're going to be essentially the same. Oops, missed it. There it is. So there's Prusa Slicer, and there's Super Slicer. They're very, if you do side by side, they are very, very same bar across the top. The same set of options over here, depending on if you have simple, advanced, or expert selected. This is the expert set of options, very similar. And so they do operate in a very similar manner. Super Slicer just has a few different things that are options, a few different, not plugins, but they're just different options on top of Prusa Slicer. Prusa Slicer is also a very good slicer, and it probably is more popular than Super Slicer. Prusa Slicer is also, I don't know if it's more popular than just plain Slicer or not, but it could be. I don't really know their usage statistics on that or not. Typically, whenever Prusa Slicer is updated, Super Slicer shortly after that gets an update to match those things plus whatever Super Slicer has. So the way these work, let's look at the Super Slicer one. We'll close Prusa because they are really very similar. You add in a model. Let's see if we can find something. Oh, there's those lithophanes that we had. Here's a ringing tower. That's going to be useful at some point soon for calculating the input shaping. The reason I use Super Slicer is because it does have some clipper profiles built into it, so you don't have to be too concerned that there's going to be a command that clipper wouldn't recognize. I don't think that really happens that much anyway, but you load in a model, and you've got the little build plate example of where it's going to land. You've got your typical stuff over here of laying it flat on the bed. You know, maybe it came in at an angle you didn't want. You wanted a different surface to be flat. You could choose any of these. You know, I don't know why you choose that one, but you can choose any of these surfaces to make it flat. You can scale just like in Cura. You know, that's a different mechanism, but it works the same. You can rotate, you know, either in an axis or about an axis, or you can even snap to the different locations. This one is not in Cura. It sort of is. So this cut. So in Cura, what you would do is you can just lower the model into the build plate. But what this one will let you do is you can do the same idea, except you can cut off the top and print the bottom part, which in Cura, I guess you could flip the part over, sink it into the bed, and that would print the top part of it. Here, this is just a little bit more straightforward, that you can cut a model, and in this case, I said to keep both of them, which was probably not a good idea because it made it where they kind of didn't auto-arrange how they were going to fit on there. And there, you could go in and manually arrange them to fit. So that's one feature that is sort of in Cura, but not maybe the quite as simple of a implementation of it. So that's the cut feature. That's useful. Let's get back to where we were. This one is, I think there is a plugin in Cura that does a similar thing, but this is paint on supports. So normally your support options over here are support on touching the build plate. So the supports have to basically grow up from the build plate, and they don't grow on the model. Say you have an indentation in the model, it wouldn't cover those areas if you did only support from the build plate. But if you do support everywhere, then you might get support all over the thing that you don't really need. Oh well, that would be this watch. I clicked that one, but this everywhere option. This model is not going to need supports at all, so it's not going to do anything. But there are, you can, once you select the object, you can paint support on. So you can pick areas where you want to make sure that they get a support. You can paint that area, and then when you go to add supports, you can, that area will certainly have supports no matter which option you choose. Or you can choose the support enforcers only, and only that area that you paint will get supports. So it's really handy if you haven't gone through and really tweaked the angle that your printer can print support with unsupported overhangs. If you haven't really gone in and tweaked that, you can just turn off supports and manually go in and paint exactly where you want the supports to occur. And they're just column, so it's just a column of supports at that spot. You can do the opposite, where you can block certain supports. So maybe you want to turn on the support everywhere, let it slice and see what it looks like, and then there's a couple of spots that you think your printer is fine at. You can use the right mouse button and block those areas on your support. So see, it turns out kind of this reddish color for blocking. I don't want supports in that area. And then shift left lets you kind of erase. So you can kind of go in there and tailor your supports. And Cura does have some plugins that are similar to that. I can't think of their name right now. I'll load up. Let me go ahead and load up Cura so I can, because I think I have it installed on mine. And if not, maybe we can find it. Let's see what this. Oh, this is you can, the seam, the Z seam, where you start and end a layer and then go up and start and end another layer. This one, you have some options in Cura of aligning that seam to the sharpest corner, or randomly, or whatever. Here you can, same idea as support painting, you can paint exactly where you want that seam to occur. So you looking at a model computers are very fast at they can do trillions of calculations before you can even think of the thing, but you are intuitively better at some things because a computer has no intuition. So you can go in, there's the AI type of things that can just do things fast enough it looks like they have intelligence and intuition, but a human can look and say, if I just put those supports or the seam right there, it would be hidden really well. And so you can intuitively go in and do things really quick just by painting and saying exactly where you want the Z-seam to be, and you probably have a good chance of hiding the seam pretty well in that case. It doesn't eliminate the seam, it's still there. You can do some other printer settings, slicer settings in particular, that will help hide the seam, but this is a good tool. I think, let me see if this is it. I think I closed Prusa, didn't I? Let me see. This is it. I remember I'm in the Super Slicer right now. Prusa Slicer may not have all of those. Let's check and see if it does. I keep, when you have several of these slicers, you do lose track of, yeah, it's in there. It's in there. So those are also in Prusa Slicer. Pretty much anything that everything Prusa Slicer does, Super Slicer will do. And then the things that Super Slicer adds are little tweaks and things here and there that just give you a little bit more control. I think all of the major features are in both of them. All right. So that's a really handy tool to have. And for the printer settings in both of these, there are profiles that you can find for every printer out there. Obviously, Prusa Slicer is going to be tailored to, when you download it for the Prusa printer set, but you can import a profile for your particular printer, and that's not that difficult. Let me see what happens if we add or remove a printer. Let's add a physical printer. Let's see. I haven't done this in a while, so let me. Well, it's got a name in there. That's fine. You should change the name. Okay. 2. Let's delete that one. Maybe I should have added a preset. Let's see if that works better. All right, there we go. If we do add preset, then there's the Creality printers already set up, and maybe you have a different size nozzle. Maybe you've got the BO Touch on there. Maybe you've got a version 2, so a lot of, unless you really have a custom oddball printer, you're going to find a preset, even in Prusa, with this Super Slicer. I think this Prusa Slicer has the same set of presets in it. And you're going to find one that's going to work for you pretty well. So, assuming you have an Ender 3, then it's right here. If you have the BO Touch on it, then you click this one over here. You have a version 2. I don't see a Pro Ender 3, but I think you would be able to use a Max or a version 2, and that would probably do the same thing. It kind of depends on what your controller looks like, I think would be the main difference there. All right, so you can add your printer into these, going through and add, remove preset printers. So that's some of the things that Prusa Slicer does. It has, so I've got the expert mode. You can do the simple mode, which really simplifies the options. You don't get the options over here for the painting the supports and painting the seam on. So if you want those, be sure you have expert selected over here. It does hide things on the GUI depending on what you have selected over here. It looks like advanced and expert both have your paint on supports as one of your options that are handy over here. Simple though, that doesn't show up. So if you're not seeing it on yours, just check you probably loaded it in simple mode. And so what happens is most of the stuff over here is your very basic setting. You can turn on supports, you can pick a nozzle, you can pick a material, and pick the printer setup. All of the detail stuff for Prusa and Super Slicer are in these tabs across the top. Now some of these tabs don't really exist in Prusa Slicer, but these others do. So you've got, everything. Basically, it's all of those things that you can find in Cura. They have different names sometimes, so some of the same things exist, but I think like spiral vase, it's called spiral vase in Slicer and Super Slicer and Prusa Slicer. It's called spiralized outer contours in Cura. So they're still there, but you do have to know the names are different, or they can be different. But there's your top and bottom layers, your perimeters, and then this, I'm in the print settings. This is just one page of them. You've got the slicing settings, the infill settings, the skirt settings. You know, all of these have their own little subset under the tab of print settings. And then you've got settings that are related to the filament. So extrusion multipliers, what size filament are you using? You can change the color of it so that in the preview window it looks like the color you plan on printing with. All of these things you can do in Cura also. So these are not particularly specific to Prusa Slicer. The one thing I will say in the Slicer series is that they're a little more accessible this way. You can see a lot more of them at once, where you have to either have picked out and installed, not installed, but highlighted the exact things you want in Cura. You know, here's Cura sitting over here. So you've got a lot of scrolling to do, and you know, you could minimize these and kind of get the same effect of what's going on in the slicer setup if you did all of this and then just open the one that you're interested in, so you get the same type of effect. But you know, a lot of these are hidden behind here where you just don't have them turned on. So it's a little, I think, more convenient to just go into the expert mode over here and look through your settings this way. And they divide them into things that are specific to the print you're about to do, the filament you're about to use, and the printer you're about to work on. So these are lined up with, you know, the kind of the slicer settings over here, the print settings, the filament settings, and the printer itself settings. So that's kind of how these are divided. So I do like how that's used over here. It can be intimidating because, you know, you look in here and, well, this one doesn't look like anything. This is just my start G-code. But you've got all these little subsections on the left-hand side that kind of expose the ones that are particular to that subsection. Rarely do I need to go in and change all of these things. You know, usually I'll change something on here, change the number of walls, top and bottom layers. That's a pretty common thing to change. Also, you sometimes want to, this is in the filament setting, so you would think, oh, if I change filament, I need to change temperature. So there's where the temperature and the bed temperature get changed. Cooling has its own little separate section over here, so the layer cooling stuff. So it's pretty logical the way it's set up, and it does have all, let's see what happens if I clicked on simple. So if you do the simple version of this, you can still do all these things, but you lose some of the options, which is probably fine because you have the most obvious stuff like perimeters, top and bottom layers, temperature printing, cooling settings. They're just, you know, the difference is here I've got the default fan speed. On advanced, I have, I can change the speed for bridges and the top layer. Expert, I can disable when the fan is not running on the first couple of layers because I really want it to stick down. So each level just gives you more options. And so if it looks intimidating, switch it over to simple. It's not as intimidating then. And if you don't find the thing you're looking for, chances are you will find the thing you're looking for. But if you don't, then go to one of the more advanced or expert tabs. So that's kind of how a slicer works, and why you might want to use one of those slicer, Prusa Slicer or Super Slicer. They're all, and again, I'm using Super Slicer because it has Clipper kind of a firmware package built into it for Clipper in some of those settings over here. Right there's the one that I'm using with Clipper. You can change that on the printer settings also. Right here, the G-code flavor. You know, it has a lot of different, depending on what firmware you're running, it has processors that will, or compilers or whatever. I don't know exactly what you would call it in this setting, but when it goes to write the G-code, it can write it in these different flavors depending on what firmware you're running on your printer. And this is the one that I know of. There might be others. The one that I know of that has Clipper as one of those options explicitly. All right, so we will. I'm not going to close these. I'm going to minimize them just because we might come back to them. I don't know. Another one. Let's see what we have. We know Cura, so let's not worry with that one. Simplified 3D. So those were all free. Prusa Slicer, Cura, Super Slicer, all free. This one is not free. This is Simplified 3D. Early on, years ago, a couple of years ago, this was the slicer. If you wanted to do any of those things that I just kind of pointed, all the little minutia type options, if you wanted to do something like that, you had to use basically Simplified 3D. It has the same type of options available. This is version, I think, 4.0.1. They are claiming that they are working on a version 5, but that's been a very long time. I assume they're eventually release one. I don't know, but I wouldn't count on it anytime soon because it's been so long that they haven't released one. But maybe they will. So how this one works is you import a model. So here's our ringing tower. I already had a model in there, I guess, in there. So we could get rid of that one if we wanted to. Over here, these processes, you can have multiple processes per model or divided up. I think you can even, like, per section of models, have different processes. But this is where your settings are in Simplified 3D. It originally had a lot more control for how you were going to do the support material, and that was a reason that a lot of people used it, was because it had much more control over supports. Now, pretty much all the slicers have this same level of control, and it doesn't really gain from that anymore. It does use a different slicing algorithm, so you will get different results if you slice on here versus slicing on Cura versus slicing on Prusa. And it still is a good slicer, but at this point, I don't know, since you still have, it's not free, I don't know that there's enough value in here to go and use it over one of the others. I use it because I paid for it a long time ago, and it is a permanent license, at least the one I had. Maybe the new one, if they ever release it, won't be a permanent license, but I don't know, this one is. So it has, you know, the same type of things where you've got your extruder information, so the physical size of the extruder, your multiplier, things like that. It is good. Prusa Slicer is also good at this if you have a machine with multiple extruders. So I do use this one when I'm on my, let's see, do I want to, no, because I don't know what those changes are. I do use it on the printer I have that has two separate extruders. And so it's handy for doing a multicolor or multi-material print on a printer that has two separate extruders. And so I do have this Vibo that has two separate extruders. They're not independent, but they are two separate extruders, and so you can do two separate materials. And so that's a handy one, and you can actually add more. There are printers out there that have more than two extruders on them. Usually they're in a tool changer type setup where they go and grab a tool, print with it for a while, put it up and grab a new tool, print with that, and I may have 5 of those. I think E3D has a multi-tool printer. It's really good. It's kind of expensive for a hobby level. And you got your layer type things that you would expect, you know, the layer height, top and bottom, number of shells. You can run your different scripts in here. Basically, that's the starting G code. They call it the starting script. If you want to do a particular thing on a layer change. So this was kind of originally how you would go in and do some of the time-lapse stuff. So every layer change, take a picture using this camera on that port and you know, that sort of thing. Move the head over to here, and so you could write a script that would create your time-lapse for you. Retraction, so if there's a particular thing you want to do on a retraction, you could spell it out. You got your speeds that it's going to print at, or your maximums anyway. Your printing speeds are not this. Where these Oh, right. These are the default printing speeds. They're just in different units. I was looking at 3,000. That's not right, but this is millimeters per minute. Most of the other slicers are per second. So that's why it's such a weird number here. You got the different left, right extruder, heat bed temperatures, so all of those kind of things. So if you hear about Simplified 3D as being the thing that some people, that's the thing they use, probably it's because they paid for it a couple of years ago, and it was the most powerful one at the time, and it was the most polished and supported, but that was years ago. Now the other slicers really have caught up and even surpassed it in a lot of ways. So maybe the next version 5, will make this one leap ahead again of the existing slicers, but right now I don't think I'd pay it's probably $100, somewhere in that range. I don't think I'd pay that for it, because most of everything that it's going to do, everything I can think of, it may do it in a different way, but it's going to be available. All those features and some other features are going to be available in the other slicers that are free. So I don't know that I would say that, oh, you need to go and get Simplified 3D, where I might have said that a couple of years ago. In fact, I'm going to close this one down. But it does, like I say, it does give you some. Here's the support thing generator that basically does a little bit more complicated version of how Prusa and Slicer and Super Slicer do the paint on support type thing. Which is a shame that they haven't updated this one in a while. Another interesting one, the last one I'll talk about, is Idea Maker. This one is, it's pretty typical slicer. It does most of the same things. I don't know that it does this paint on supports. I don't use this one as much. The one reason that I like this one above the others is that it has this embossing tool. So you can take, in fact, let's see if I can remember how to do this. Let's add in our ringing model. I don't know that I'll be able to remember how to do this because I don't do it that much. I don't know where I put there it is. All right, so there's the model. And, wow, I don't know if I can remember how to do this, but we could figure it out. I just don't remember exactly how. But what it will do is you can emboss a texture. So a picture, you can have a picture, a black and white picture, and emboss that picture on a flat, or it doesn't have to be flat, but on your model. It might be in the texture. Oh, how to apply texture in Idea Maker. We can look and see. And see how easy it works. I've done it before, but so here's some examples. You just have a regular revolved base out of any kind of modeling package that can revolve this shape. And here you've got these two that look like, how did they do that? All this is a picture that's been embossed and stamped onto this white model over here. And so you can create really complicated things without having to do it in CAD. And so here they've got this kind of looks like a basket weave texture on the outside of the headphones. So it looks like import a model. We did that. Add and adjust texture. So select the model, click the texture icon, select custom texture. Hopefully it has some loaded because I didn't go get any. I guess we could find one. We're going to do a custom texture. We will map it in a cube way since we have an object here that's more or less cube shaped. It's more cube than it is anything else. Texture. Oh, it doesn't have any already. All right, so let's do a little quick Google search for a basket weave. So if you do texture, I don't know that we will get. Well, here we go. If we do tiling, that will help, because that will make one that actually is meant to be tiled. So let's just find some picture here. I don't know, something that's relatively. I don't know what I clicked on. Oh, this is actually buying that. I don't want to buy it. So I don't want to buy the actual basket. I just want a texture that looks like that. This one might work pretty well. The better ones are going to be grayscale or black and white, so it'll get more definition on the relief. The color ones will probably work, but it's using basically the darkness, kind of like the lithophane does. Oh, I have a reminder to talk about that if I ever remember it. Let's see if we can. Let's see if we can take this as a texture. We'll put it on the basket. It may not take JPEGs. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, JPEG is the first one. There it is. All right. And look at that. It maps it. You can go in here and control how it maps in the, shift it left and right, up and down, shift the scale of it down. Maybe you want to, well, not up that, but you can scale it different ways to get more or less of the pattern on there, depending on what you want. You can either apply it once, mirror it, clamp it to an edge, all these different things. Let's not worry too much about the individual settings. So we have it applied there. Let's check our instructions over here, which I might have closed. Here it is. Click the plus, apply the texture. No image requirement size format other than it's an image, JPEG, bitmap, PNG, or even a .texture file. Greater contrast, that's what I was talking about. The black and white images work better. Again, Idea Maker is another free slicer, so this is one you don't pay for. It can't apply texture to a flat surface that is parallel to the print bed. So you could use that to your advantage. If there are certain flat surfaces you don't want the texture on, make them parallel to the print bed. This is what I wanted to do in the slicing preview. So I guess we go to slice it. Let's find out. Start slicing. Oh, it does have. I do remember this is why I don't use Idea Maker, because it has such a different way of slicing. I think you have to bring in some different materials that you want to use. Like I haven't set up what material I'm slicing for or anything like that. And the workflow was just different. I think I've got it set up where it's set up to slice on. Okay, that's fine. See how long it takes to slice. This texture is not terribly complicated, so it shouldn't take too long. And then we'll check our preview of it. So the first time you go through and slice, you do have to create a material or import a material. You got to do all these different things, set up your printer, all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of like any other slicer. Its workflow was just different enough that it caused me some having to think about how to do all that stuff. Preview. They give you some false hope here. It goes and then just starts over. So there we go. All right. So you can see that now it has, let's see, how do you slide through it over here? Yeah, there you go. This was a flat wall. These were all flat walls. And now they are not, it's not just a, a texture map type thing that applies a picture to it. It actually goes and indents, and I don't know if it can extrude, like protrude, but I know it will indent. And I just don't know enough about how it processes this based on that black and white image that you applied to it. And now when you print this out, that embossing will be present in your print. It will have an actual indent and look like it has a basket weave pattern on it. And you didn't do anything to model that pattern. You went and added a texture picture. It took, 3 minutes total for us? It took us longer to find the texture than it did for it to do the applying of the texture. So that's one I don't think exists in other slicers. You can do that other ways in other modeling packages. Like you could apply a bump map or a texture map to a model in, don't know if SolidWorks would do that sort of thing. That's not really what SolidWorks is meant to do. It can apply pictures like stamps, but I don't know if it can deform the geometry with one or not. But there are modeling packages that can do that. But here I'm in the slicer, and I can do that. Now, obviously, it's going to add some time because now it has a lot more movements to make. But you can get some really cool effects. Create a, go to Tinkercad and make a vase. There are revolve tools in Tinkercad, and then find the texture you want to apply to it and make it look like you spent days modeling this thing when it's really just a texture wrapped around a pretty plain model. So that's one cool thing about Idea Maker that none of the other slicers that I know of can do. I'm sure they will be able to soon because Idea Maker's been doing this for a couple of months now, maybe 6 months, something like that. And so it probably won't be long until other slicers do this too. But it is a pretty cool feature. And so that's why I put it in here. Like I said, there are a lot of other slicers out there. Oh no, I don't want to save it. There are plenty of them to choose from. This one is, it's just really cool what it can do as far as the texture mapping type thing. Cura is going to get you plenty of miles for just getting a print done. And Cura, oh yeah, I was going to look and see if, yeah, it doesn't look like I have, maybe they don't show up until I put a model in there. Let's see if I was going to see if their, the support one was in here, but it doesn't look like it's in here. But I think it just takes so long to load up the marketplace for Cura or to get other plugins. Let's go to the web one. There is one here. There is Arc Welder, by the way. Somebody did mention that earlier. So there is Arc Welder. So if you don't want to use Octoprint to get the reduced file size to create the arcs instead of every curved surface being just a series of line segments, it does look like Arc Welder works in here. I don't see the one that I'm thinking of that has oh, custom supports right there. So this plugin lets you do similar things to what the Prusa paint on supports was doing. Oh, you have to sign in. You have to create a little account. It's all free, but you do have to do it. And I don't know if I remember any, unless it remembers it for me. I probably don't remember my password for this. It doesn't even remember my email. So I don't know. So we'll see. But you can plug in that custom supports, and then it crashed on me. You can plug in custom supports and go in and get similar effects to what you can do in the Simplified 3D and in the Slicer series of things. All right, that's kind of a state of the art for where these slicers are. There are others. There are probably some others that have some really cool features that I don't even know about. Those are the ones that I know of that have some unique features to some of the others. The Z-seam painting and the support painting, the texture mapping and Idea Maker. Cura is kind of like the baseline, but Cura has all these plugins that can do different things. Arc Welder, Cura may be the only one that has an Arc Welder plugin. I don't know that the others do. I really like it just because it makes more sense. If you have arcs in your model and your G-code is capable of understanding arcs, then why not write the G-code as arcs to begin with versus individual little line segments? You don't have any control as far as I know. I haven't used the Cura plugin version, but you don't typically have any control over when it decides to convert an arc or leave it as lines, and so you might get a little bit softer model. It's a little bit less sharp on the corners, but I typically like the Arc Welder thing. All right, let's look at. Oh, wait, that reminds me. On the color lithophanes, last time I was mentioning that you could do the color lithophanes with the multi-material printer, But what the itslitho.com does is it's a single color, and or single color filament, and it grabs color information by you print out on a paper printer a colored sheet that sits behind your lithophane, and it's where you get the color from. So you can print a color lithophane with a single extruder printer. I assume that the print has to be a pretty neutral color, like a beige or white or something like that. And then the sheet, you do have to have a color printer. The sheet behind it provides the color information. So it's not quite what I was thinking. You can do it the way I was thinking, but what that one does is can be done on any printer. This is sitting out here, I guess, not necessarily for any reason other than this is I use this for setting valve lash on a valve train in a car engine, but it does have what this is. This is a set of feeler gauges, and so they're spring steel metal, and you can use these. In fact, I used them a minute ago or a day ago to set your nozzle height off of the bed. So I said I basically homed everything, made the z-axis go to 0.2 millimeters, a typical layer height, and then used this feeler gauge to actually set my z offset. So this printer was running with the BL Touch, so you have to know the distance between when the BL Touch triggers and when the nozzle actually hits the bed. They're not the same, obviously, because the BL Touch has to trigger before the nozzle actually hits the bed. And so you have to set that gap, and I use these feeler gauges. So that this could be a good tool versus the sheet of paper, because it's printed on the gauge itself what that gap is, and it's not going to change on you. So this is a good tool to have if you want to get very precise on your Z offset on your print bed, between your nozzle and your print bed. So I realized I had these the other day, and I said, well, why don't I just use that? And I did, and it worked. The Voron parts. So this is what you get. This is what printer kits actually looked like years ago too. Maybe not as nice as this, but this is the way you kind of expected them to be. The Creality, I don't know which one was first. Maybe the CR10 or one of those. When they started, you just have to put the gantry on the base and you're pretty much done. That's not how these kits are. So it comes in a box. I haven't really gone through it. I opened it, but I haven't gone through it. And so this is for the V0. So it's the little 120 millimeter print bed Voron. And this is the kind of stuff you get. So get a build sheet. There's the tiny little heat bed that kind of gives you, this isn't the bed itself, this is the heater that goes under the bed. So it gives you an idea of the size. It's this is not quite 120 millimeters, I don't think. Yeah, this is only 100 millimeters, but the bed only sticks out 10 millimeters beyond this. So it's a really tiny bed on this one. I kind of wanted to start with something smaller. You get your SD card. This is the kit from Formbot. You get your JST connectors. So I haven't decided yet. Obviously, it's set up for you to build the entire wiring harness yourself, but you can buy a pre-built wiring harness, and it's not terribly expensive. I haven't decided. I kind of think I might just buy the wiring harness instead of building it myself and keep all this for other projects. But it's set up that you go in and you build the wiring harness. Here's our little Dragon hot end. This is actually a really cool piece. I don't want to get it open too much yet, but you can kind of see how it works in there. It's got the silicone sock, hardened steel nozzle, and then the copper heatsink. Did I get the plated? I don't think I got the plated nozzle, but the copper heatsink in here. This is made for higher flow, so you can print at higher temperatures and get more material out. I don't think I'm going to be too interested in that, just because of the size of the build here. There's actually a super one of these that is even higher flow. This, thinking it's going to be probably the bed temperature sensor. Well, no. Yeah, I think it might be. Don't know. Some magnets, pulleys. Apparently it's got a 3-point bed leveling. The 4-point, where you have 4 springs, one at each corner, actually kind of doesn't make sense, because it would, it takes 3 points to define a plane. And so all the printers at one time had 3-point bed leveling. This one apparently does too. Obviously this is a really small bed. But that 3-point makes a whole lot more sense, because of once you add that 4th point in there, now you could have 2 planes defined, like 2 triangles, and you might never get it perfectly flat. Your springs are working against one another. So the 3-point actually does make a lot more sense. And I'm just assuming that's the case in this one, because there's only 3 springs in here. This is probably our thermistor. Yeah, there it is. No. There it is, right there. So it's a cartridge thermistor. Well, if I turn the page over, you would see it says thermistor. What have we got? I think this might be what the intent. This is stepper motor wire. So the intent is I wire up all the steppers individually. We may do that part. I have one stepper motor wire already wired. I'm not sure why. Regular power cord. Not sure what's in here. Oh, so this uses a different kind of stepper. So this is not a NEMA 17. This one, well, it's a Moons, but I don't know how they are, like what their specifications are. So different kind for that. I don't know if they use that on the extruder, probably. Gates belts, so these are the better cogged belts. And this is a very important part for this style of printer. This is, even though it's a small boron, it's still a Core XY. Is it just typical printer paper? Oh, for the litho, as far as I know, I don't know that that's, if it has to be that translucent like vellum. In fact, let's see. That's a good question. Guides. Color lithophane. I didn't read it. Upload image. That's just making the lithophane. So they do recommend that it's a white filament that you use, and they have a particular brand here, eSun, but I assume most cool whites, most white filaments are going to work. Okay, so here it says, oh, you're not seeing what I'm reading. Here it says that it can be regular printer paper, but transparent paper works too. They don't really say one works better than the other one. I think it could. I would try it first, unless you just happen to have a printer that can print on transparent paper of some sort. There used to be, I don't even know if this exists anymore, but there used to be that you could print overhead transparencies on inkjet printers. I don't even know if you can still get that stuff anymore, because not many people use overhead transparencies anymore. But at one time you could, and so you could try that. But it says it'll work on plain paper. Got some tubing, some limit switches, spring for, this is going to be an anti-backlash nut. You can add these to your to any printer. So whenever if you're doing something like Z-hop or anything where your Z-axis moves back and forth. Normally your Z-axis just moves up a notch, prints, moves up a notch, prints. But if you're doing anything with Z-hopping or any reason why your Z-axis is moving a lot, these little guys will remove some of the backlash that exists. So backlash is your screw threads on like the Z-screw and the little nut that the Z-screw goes through. Those threads can't be perfectly matched. You know, you can't make them exactly the same. They have to have some tolerance in them. And that amount of tolerance is called backlash. And so when you're going in one direction, it basically is not, you know, it's riding on one side of the threads, but when you reverse direction, there's a little gap when it has to, the screw has to, well, the nut has to move down and catch the other side of those threads. And so that little gap between when you change directions, that's backlash. This kind of thing will help eliminate that backlash. It doesn't eliminate it, but it helps reduce it. And you can add that, my whole point was you can add that to your existing printer. Looks like magnetic tape and foam. So this is an enclosed printer. So this is probably part of the enclosure. This is probably the control board, I guess. No, this is power supply. Lots of little bearings. Bushing. Oh no, these are feet. Here's more of your regular stepper. Lots of little connectors to put together. The little retaining ring things for the push fit connectors. Drag chain for one of the cables. A tiny little drag chain. Lots of hardware. All the little nuts and bolts. So the way the Voron setup works is you don't go in and buy a Voron printer. It's an open source printer, and you can either go and try and source all these parts yourself, which is totally possible. Probably better, unless you just have easy access to this sort of thing, probably better to get a pre-built kit, because otherwise you're going to go and source, you know, all of this stuff. And there are going to be some of them that you're going to have to buy in quantities that you don't need, you know. So you're going to have to buy 100 of these things and you need 10 or whatever. Oh, what's in here? This might be the charger for the control board, but I don't know. I don't know what that is. These are side panels. Got some. They're got a covering on them. They're clear, but the covering's not, so we'll take that off at some point. Lots of side panels. Lots of them. I don't know if there's two sets in there, one clear and one opaque or not, but there's two of them in there. Little print bed, the Energetic 3D. I've wanted to try one of these before. This doesn't look like, or is that the back side of it? Let's see. Yeah, there's the textured side. So I've wanted to try one and see. They're supposed to be pretty good. I've never had one. So this is, you know, this is the bed. So you've got a 5mm thick sheet of aluminum, basically. And over this area, that probably is pretty flat. I don't know, but I would assume. And so here's kind of the size of the printer. You know, here's your little extruded aluminum rails that would be the 20 by 20s on your Ender 3. You know, here you've got, I don't know, is that 15 by 15 or 12 by 12 or something? I don't know. They're much tinier little rails. So there's a bunch of them too. A whole lot of them in there. The heater cartridge. So I think I just, I did get the 40 watt one. So this is another thing. If you get kind of anxious for your heater on your hot end to heat up, it's really slow. There are higher wattage heaters that you can use. Here's, again, tiny little stepper motors. Not NEMA 17s. These are NEMA something else. It's smaller. I don't know the number of them, though. Little fans. Raspberry Pi. Oh, it's off the screen. So it's got a Pi 3 that comes with it. I think this is going to be a SKR E3, mini E3. Some little linear rails. On these linear rails, if you ever do anything, you'll hear, if you spend any time looking on the internet about 3D printers, you'll hear somebody say, oh, you ought to have linear rails. And they are good, but be careful. They come with these little stoppers on here for a reason. If you ever let this come off of here, there are many, I don't know if you can see them down in there. Let's see if we can zoom in so you can see. Well, you can kind of catch a glint. Tiny little ball bearings that are only held in because they are trapped between this groove and this piece. So if this piece comes off, all of those go everywhere, and you will have a fun time putting it back together. This is a, there's no, I can't find any slop in this, so I think this is actually a decent linear rail. And again, it's super tiny, so we're zoomed in a lot. Here's super tiny, so it's not going to be that it's need to do a whole lot. There's some more of them down there. I assume that's the Z axis. It looks like extruder parts, switch. I don't know if there's another layer beneath this one or not. I kind of don't want to take it all apart. I don't think there is. I think that's the bottom layer. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to be in for if you want to build a Voron, is this. And there's still parts I need to print. There's 50 maybe parts that I need to print to assemble all this stuff. And I have not printed those yet. So all of this, there may be some prep work, a lot of wiring work that I can do if I don't go with the wiring harness route. But that's just so you have an idea of some of these more custom printers. It can do a lot. The kits, this kit was, by the time, I think you can get it for maybe $3.99, but if you add a fancier hot end, then that's going to bump the price up. If you add a wiring kit, it's another $40 probably. So they can start to get really expensive, and this is a super tiny, this size cubed is the part you can print. You can print it really fast, but that's the size of the part you can print. So I just wanted to, I don't intend to do a build of this as part of the lecture series or even just anything. I'll update on it there and again, but I just wanted you to see kind of what it looks like if you want to do that, so you know that it's not like building the Ender 3 or anything like that. So there's not going to be a kit pre-assembled that I know of. At least at some point, somebody is probably going to pre-assemble kits and you can buy them. The reason that I want one of these is a couple of things. Primarily is that it is open source, so you have control over every little piece that you want to do on there. The closed source printers, you can kind of do that, but a lot of times you're working around what someone else has put in place as their version of maybe the firmware or something like that. And those printers have a place. We're looking at buying some printers from Stratasys, and those are going to be very closed sourced, but they have a reason that they are that way. It's kind of like an Apple product versus an Android product, where you don't really have a lot of choice on what you can do inside an Apple phone or on the software side of the Apple phone, but it's set up so that on purpose, that way you can't go in there and mess with things. It just does what it does, and it usually does it pretty well. But these printers, they're completely open source. You can do whatever you want to and build. You have to build the thing from scratch. But the other part of it is that it's a Core XY printer, and I don't have a Core XY printer of any kind. And they have certain advantages where the bed moves. Well, in this one, the bed is going to move up and down. Some of them, the bed doesn't move at all. But I think this one, the bed does move up and down. So it does move, but it moves very, very slowly. And the Core XY can print at ridiculously fast speeds, particularly with the Dragon hot end. That's one of the higher flow hot ends. So it can print very quickly. And so we can crank out some parts without a lot of waiting on the part to actually print. All right. I think that's it for today. So we talked about some slicers, talked about the Voron, the lithophane a little bit. And I think Monday, we'll probably do the flexible stuff on Monday. It says we're going to do the thermal simulation, but I'll probably flip those two. And we'll wrap up. I'll go ahead and open up quiz 3. I'll try to go and open it up right after this. Again, it's not a technical quiz. It does count as one of your grades for completion, but it's a survey quiz. All right, I will see y'all Monday. We got 1 week left. Make sure that you're getting... I have gone through... So on the assignments, I thought that it was going to give me an update every time somebody posted one of the assignments turned in, but it doesn't. And so I got way behind, and I just thought that, well, maybe everybody wait until the end to turn things in. But it gives me, like, it says there's 3 unread benchy things, none of these unread. And so I think that means that maybe that someone read them, just maybe not me. So I don't know. It was weird. I thought it was going to work differently. So I've got a lot of catching up to do on your assignments. And make sure you get those in. There was also... Someone had asked the question, do I drop the lowest of the options? You know, you've got the option 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Do I drop the lowest one? This Voron Kit, well, let me answer the Voron Kit. This Voron Kit with the Dragon hot end was $430, I think. $430. Without the upgraded hot end, it was $399, I think. From Formbot is where I got it. There are other much more expensive versions. LDO, the letter L, the letter D, the letter O. They have a really good kit, but it costs twice that. So there's the 2.4. That's the big Voron. I didn't want to jump out directly into the bigger one. I wanted the V0. Yeah, it's $399. And then I put the Dragon hot end, which made it $439. And it actually shipped really quick. It came straight from China, or at least the box originated in China. Maybe they had it in a warehouse somewhere. It came in a few days. FedEx, I think, shipped it. So the shipping might have not been included in this price. I can't remember that, if shipping was included or not. So there might be some shipping costs. I don't remember that. Oh yeah, I was saying catch up on this, and then somebody had asked about if I dropped a option. I think what they were thinking of is that of the 4, so option 1, 2, 3, and 4 are kind of, you just choose anything you want from the list, but there's a wide variety of things. If you were to do 5 of those, yes, I would drop one of them and only count 4, but I'd still count 4. Option 5 is the technical report. That one I don't drop at all. So I think their idea, or what they had got the impression, was that I was going to drop one of the 5 things, option 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, but that's not it. If there's any dropping, it's not dropping. It's just if you do more than required, I take your best set of stuff, but of the option 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I don't know where that actually came from, but that's how it would work. Nobody ever really falls into that category that I remember. I guess some people do extra just because they want to print, and they printed the thing so they turn it in. But that would be the only way that would work, and it wouldn't apply to option 5 anyway, just to clear that up. All right, I'll be back Monday.